I have a question I want you to think about. Are we still free and independent states? We'll ponder that next on the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday Americans.
Hello there, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study, and we are once again here to read and study and teach the rising generation to be free. I'm glad you could join me. As always, head over to the website, constitutionstudy.com, right there on the screen. Learn more about what we're doing and where I'll be. I hope to see you. I hope to bump into you and talk to you. I have a great time when I bump into people at my speaking engagements. I've got a few scheduled. You can find them on the website. If you are there, if you can join, please come over and say hello, shake my hand. I like that connection and I love the interaction. And if you've got an event you'd like me to consider speaking at, well, you can go to the website. Under events, you can say request a speaker, and hopefully I'll be able to come out and speak to you and your group. I hope to see you there. So today, there's been a series, this kind of underlying current in several of my last podcast episodes. And I wanted to take a minute to kind of sit back and ponder this for a minute. That's what these Ponder This episodes are about. Take a minute, sit back, and ponder what's been going on. Now, I've done several podcast episodes that revolve around the case of who rules who. Do the people, are the people sovereign over the government, or is the government sovereign over the people? And there's another part to that question which keeps popping up, and that is, are we still free and independent states? In other words, do the states rule the federal government, or does the federal government rule the states? See, if you remember all the way back to 1776, we declared independence. We said that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, independent nations, sovereign nations. That's what was created back in 1776. 13 free and independent states, nations of their own, with all the authority of every other nation, such as Great Britain, Spain, France, all the same powers. Now, we agreed in 1787 to take some of the authority, some of the sovereignty of those states, and place that in a central government, because we understood that 13 states doing their own thing could be a little fractious. So we said things mostly dealing with foreign affairs would be in the hands of this central government. There'd be a union of states and a central government that would handle foreign affairs. And then the states would be left alone. And that the states, because the states created the federal government, they were sovereign over it. They got to decide what the federal government could and could not do. Yet look at our state nowadays. Look at the condition of this nation. Are the states telling the federal government what they can and cannot do, or is it the other way around? Does the federal government tell the states what they are and are not allowed to do? Now, this is a very important point. It's one of those simple little things that we kind of lose in modern discussion to say, are the states independent? Are they free or not? You see, if we followed our founding fathers, the states would continue to tell the federal government what it can and cannot do. Now, there are a lot of things, there are several things, maybe put it better, I don't want to be hyperbolic, but there are things that I think the federal government should do. And I think there are things that the Constitution hadn't thought of when it was written. It was written 240 years ago. The problem is, rather than following the rules and saying, okay, states, let's agree that we're going to add this authority to the federal government. I'll give you a perfect example. The FAA. I'm not picking on the FAA, but it's a perfect example. See, when the Constitution was written, there was no such thing as an airplane. Interstate travel was horseback. They didn't even have trains then. It was horseback. It took days to travel interstate. And the federal government was allowed to manage commerce between the states. Then we had trains. And someone said, well, we need to regulate the trains. And since the trains go interstate, they could have commerce interstate. We'll just put all of the train management under the federal government. Not just the commerce. No, there's a state saying, we'll let you have commerce. Now we're going to say, you know what? We're going to give you everything. Even though there's no constitutional authority. But the states didn't do that. That's the problem. The people asked the federal government to do that, or in some cases, the federal government just thought, well, we're the best ones. We should do it. Let's do it. See, I hear a lot of people saying, well, this is something the federal government should do. Yeah, but is it legally allowed to? Now we have airplanes. I can hop on an airplane here in Tennessee. I can travel all the way across the country to one side. I can travel all the way across the country to the other side. And I can travel home in just a couple of days. In fact, if I really wanted to, I could fly from where I live to any state in the Union, except maybe Hawaii and Alaska, and I can come back in the same day. Now, how would states regulate that type of environment? How would the states have a set of standards for airports, for air travel? It would be nuts. It really is, I do believe, something that should be regulated at the federal level. The problem is we need the states to tell the federal government, here's how much you can touch. Here's what we'll allow you to do. This and no more. We want to have a standardized set of plans for airports, right? Signs and lengths and standards. You know what? That's probably not a half bad idea. The state should get together and amend the Constitution and say, federal government, you are allowed to do this. If we believe that things like drug standards should be handled, I personally don't. But if the majority of the states agree that, yes, the federal government should handle drug standards, well, then they need to tell the states need to tell them. But you see, by bypassing that important step and just kind of letting the feds make it up as they go along, now the feds believe they can tell the states what to do. They can say, no, state, you're not allowed to determine highway standards. We're going to do it. No, you're not going to be allowed to set standards for motor vehicles. We're going to do it. You're not going to be allowed to determine what is and is not effective use of drugs or count any one of a number of things. The feds just say, we're going to do it. You know, when they prohibited alcohol, they at least had the brains then to say, we need a constitutional amendment to allow the federal government to prohibit alcohol. Then when they decided that was not such a good idea, they said, okay, we're not going to prohibit it, but we're going to let the federal government manage it. At least it was legal. We don't bother with that anymore. In fact, if you go, there's a website, an A to Z list of federal departments and agencies, and in that list of federal departments is included all 50 states. Why? Because the federal government treats the states as if they're agencies of the federal government. They've given away their power. They did it through the 16th Amendment, through the 17th Amendment, through the 21st Amendment. I think it was the 21st, the repeal of prohibition. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. We've done it when the states haven't challenged the federal government's authority to enact legislation they're not authorized to. And we've lost it when the states sit around waiting for goodies, grants, money from Washington. When we said, you know what, Washington, you create a Department of Education. You send us money. You tell us what to do. You know, I focus a lot on the federal government because this is the Constitution study. But the Constitution also puts responsibility on the state governments. And it's time for our states to stop acting like servants of the federal government and start acting like their masters. It is time for those people we elect to our state houses to realize They have authority over the federal government, and it's time for them to enforce it. It's also time for our sheriffs to realize that they hold a responsibility only to the Constitution and us, and not the federal government, and enforce it. It will take people with backbone. It'll take people with a thick skin, because they are going to get called every name in the book. They're going to come at them like you wouldn't believe. Can we find people like that? Can we find people that hold liberty and rights in such high esteem that they will suffer the slings and arrows of politicians, of pundits, of the media? Can we? I think it's time to start looking. I was at a conference and someone said I should run for office. I don't think we're ready for that yet. I think I can do much more good here speaking to you. It's not my goal to become a politician. But I do think it's important that we start looking for men and women who will work to return liberty to this nation and do so via the legal means that will recognize we the people created the states created the federal government, and we will enforce authority that way. So that's what I think. I think it's time for the states to stop genuflecting before the federal government and start kicking it in the shins. And maybe if we did a little bit of that, maybe the federal government wouldn't be stomping on our rights, and maybe our states would stop sitting there and taking it and accepting bribes from the federal government to enact unconstitutional laws just because they're willing to pay for it. So I hope it made you think. I hope it made you ponder this. Head over to the website, constitutionstudy.com. Let me know what you think. Ask a question. Give me a comment. I love the feedback I've been getting. I hope you enjoy this series of Ponder This, and I hope to see you again the next time on the Constitution Study. Have a great day.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long